Our lives are laid out on a road of bumps, turns, struggles, and more. How do we respond? How do we endure adversity for learning and growth? I'm Aubrey Johnson, and we'll explore these questions and more on The Road to Rediscovery. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Road to Rediscovery. I'm your host, Aubrey Johnson. The Road to Rediscovery is about reflecting on life lessons to learn and grow from them, and of course, take it to the next level and uplift others who are struggling through dark times. As a quick reminder, you can hear this show anywhere you get your podcasts. We invite you to rate and review if you happen to listen on Apple Podcasts. Otherwise, we would still love your feedback by shooting us a quick email at roadtorediscoverypodcast@gmail.com. That's roadtorediscoverypodcast@gmail.com. We'll even give you a shout out in a future episode. My special guest is a true testament of overcoming a rough road of adversities and struggles to build a community of empowerment and support for so many others. Adopted at 9 weeks old, navigating through chronic pain, depression, and anxiety since childhood. At 15, she developed an eating disorder and has suffered through physical and sexual abuse in her late teens. She's now the creator of the blog, podcast, and community called It Hurts to Mom, providing encouragement for parents suffering with chronic pain. Let's welcome Lauren Rose to the show. Lauren, welcome to the show. It's so great to have you here.
Thank you. I'm honored to talk to you.
Oh, likewise. We're honored to have you on the show. So, Lauren, if we can start by sharing with the listeners just a glimpse into some of the adversities that you've had early on in your journey, and how did it make you feel, some of those challenges at that time? And then, share with us the inspiration that helped you to kind of transform into the community that you've built today. I know it's a big loaded question, but if you can just give us a glimpse into that would be great.
Sure. Like you said, I was adopted when I was 9 weeks old. I was taken out of my birth mom's arms with 3 to 5 minutes of her having me. She was giving me up for adoption, so they didn't want her to form any kind of bond with me. And so throughout my teen years is when I really started feeling a lot of the rejection and abandonment issues from that situation. Then I had a verbally abusive father, so I got used to stuffing all of my emotions and my opinions and my thoughts and my preferences down, because just nothing was ever good enough for him. And if you didn't agree with him and if you weren't happy, then he would get really angry. And then I started having chronic migraines when I was about 15. Okay. And that happens to be about the time when I developed my eating disorder. And I guess I felt pretty out of control and powerless. And, going through the sexual and physical trauma in my late teens, early 20s, that made me feel even more powerless in my life. Those are situations where, you don't have a lot of power. So it was really difficult. And then I was still struggling with daily migraines. And then when I was 35, I started having really bad neck and low back pain. And that just spiraled out of control. I found out I have autoimmune disease, and I've got inflammatory and degenerative arthritis. I have degenerative disc disease in my spine, and I've got fibromyalgia now, in addition to the mental health issues and the migraines that I was already dealing with. So I've just felt a lot of powerlessness in my life. Even, with chronic pain, it's a very powerless journey and often a very lonely one. And I had to stop working when I was 37. Just my spinal pain just got so bad. And I went into a really deep depression for about 2 years. I had lost a lot of my functionality. I'd lost my job, my career. I felt like I'd lost part of my identity. And the biggest thing, I think, is I'd lost my purpose in life. I felt like since I couldn't work and I could barely take care of myself and my, 4 or 5-year-old daughter, that I just didn't have a purpose anymore. Now, I know in my heart that's not true, but that's what I was going through at the time. And so I ended up joining a ladies' Bible study. We were reading this fantastic book by Lisa Turkhurst called It's Not This Way. She's a wonderful Christian author.
Mm.
And I came out of my deep depression. Really, two things helped get me out of it. One is there was a lady in my group who encouraged me to practice intentional daily gratitude every single day. 3 things I was grateful for, and
Yes, yes.
reach out to God for all the things that I did still have, and that helped change my perspective from everything that I lost and everything I couldn't do to things that I still could do, even if there was, maybe pain involved. So
Right.
like one of the big ones was, it was really excruciating for me to walk at the time. However,
Yeah.
I became thankful that I still had legs and I still could walk, even though it did cause me a lot of pain.
Hmm.
And the other thing that the book really, got through to me is that God could take my, what I felt was a broken life and make something new and beautiful out of it, which is something I had
Oh, yeah.
not considered before. That I just felt like my life was over because I couldn't have a career and I didn't know
Hmm.
what I was supposed to do with my life. But
Hmm.
realizing that really just changed everything.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing. That can be a pivot or a turning point, right? Because then you start to realize, the possibilities are endless, right?
Mm.
And thank goodness for that Bible study, uh, because between the book, between the conversations with with your fellow Christians, there's a lot of revelations that came out of those conversations and out of those Bible studies. And you're right when it comes to thinking about your purpose or falling into deep depression, and you feel like you don't have a purpose anymore. When you're a mother, you have children counting on you and so forth. Yes, you do have a purpose, but what is your reality at that time, right? Your reality at that time, based on how you feel, is that you feel like you don't have a purpose. These Bible studies and talking with people really helps to open our eyes, right, and realize, there's some, there is more meaning to life. This may be the end of one chapter, but you have a purpose, and you may not even know what that other purpose is in life, but over time it gets revealed to you as long as you stay the course, which sounds like is what you did, Lauren.
Yeah, so what ended up happening was I still didn't know what my purpose was, but I
Okay.
started, at least not at the time, but I
Hmm.
started connecting with other people on different forums, Facebook groups, apps for people with chronic pain,
Hmm.
chronic illness, and
Hmm.
previous trauma. And I felt like a lot of joy that I hadn't felt in years from encouraging other people who were going through the same things as I was going through or had gone through, and giving them advice and mostly helping them feel not alone.
Yes.
And that's when I decided that I thought my new purpose in life was to help other people with chronic pain not feel so alone, because community is so important. It is in the Christian life and it is when you're going through something.
Yes.
And we know 1 out of 5 people lives with chronic pain. That's a worldwide statistic and a
Right.
United States statistic. That's a lot of people. That's 20% of people. And yet it feels very alone because we keep so much of it to ourselves. So
Right. Yeah, that's true. It is kept to yourself. Those who are going through it. My wife has chronic pain. She
mm,
has fibromyalgia ever since, like 33 years ago, from a traumatic event, rear-ended by a large truck, just massive trauma, as well as a traumatic upbringing. An abusive father and so forth. And so one of the things she has told me, through her journey of chronic pain and the post traumatic stress of her upbringing with the abusive, father, is that, in addition to wanting a purpose and not wallowing in, pits of despair or depression, which is easy to slide in, she wanted peace. She wanted peace. Household growing up was just so noisy because of the abuse, the arguments, and everything. She just wanted peace. Um, has that been one of the elements in which you search for as well, or was it something different, like your purpose, or where you add value in other people's lives? What was your North Star, I guess I should ask, when it comes to getting out of that post-traumatic stress and depression?
When I was having the really bad bout of depression, it was my daughter. I
Hmm.
just realized how much time I was spending in bed, either due to the pain or
Hmm.
to the depression. And I
Hmm.
realized I didn't want my daughter to grow up and remember me as the mom who was always in bed, depressed, and in pain all the time.
Right. Gotcha. Gotcha. That makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. So, is it fair to say then, in understanding how everyone's different, um, some people decide, okay, they just subscribe to that way of life. They're like, this is how my life's going to be. I'm going to be limited in these areas. I might as well just sit, eat potato chips, and watch Netflix, and then, and I don't mean to diminish it at all, but there's also those who say, I want to live. I want to fight this. I want to manage this as best as I can. Sure, there's going to be pain. I mean, to manage, to navigate through, but I want to travel, or I want to raise my kids, or I want to be able to play games with them. You know, it sounds like that was one of the North Stars or determining factors for you. You chose the path of wanting to live and to be there and to show up, as people say today, for their family, their children, and play out that purpose.
One of my core beliefs is I don't believe that we are controlled by our circumstances. I don't believe our circumstances control our attitudes. I don't believe
Right.
they control our destiny.
Okay.
And for me, I want to put good into the world, and I wanted to, like you said, be there for my daughter.
Yeah.
I refuse to believe, because I believe everything happens for a reason to those that love the Lord,
Hmm.
that God had put this in my path for a reason.
Yes.
And I just refuse to believe that there wasn't a purpose for it. There wasn't a
Hmm.
divine purpose.
Hmm.
And so my rationalization was that, the divine purpose for me having chronic illness was to help other people dealing with the same issues.
Right. Right. And it takes a while. It takes a journey to come to that realization, right? I'm a true believer that that is the journey that God takes you on to for you to realize, um, at the point, even though we've had chronic pain all our lives, um, in this case, that doesn't mean like in eighth grade, suffering through chronic pain, you were ready to help others. There was more on the journey to experience, to in order to to be ready, whether you knew that was your purpose at the time or not, and in most cases we don't know. you know I'd love for you to unpack for us, Lauren, if you can, this whole misnomer, right? um, uh, and I'm not exactly sure of your age, but I'm of the generation to where, um, I grew up in a household where you really don't express when you're angry or when you're sad. If you're happy, of course, say it. But when you're upset about something, or sad about something, you don't really express that, and that can lead to um, some difficult ways of coping as we become adults. And how do we break that cycle? Or how do you think, or how did you break that cycle, um, say, with raising your children in your family?
Yeah, and I was raised the exact same way. So I'm 43,
Okay.
and when we would be sad or angry, my dad would literally say, "You're just a child. You have no reason to be angry." Or "You're just a child. You have no reason to be sad." One time I
Okay.
was 16, I had an opinion of my own, and
Mm,
he's, "You're just a child. You don't know what you're talking about."
mm,
So the way that we are changing things with our daughter is to be very intentional,
yeah.
to welcome all emotions, not
Mhm.
the way she always expresses emotions,
Right, right.
like
Yeah.
anger.
Uh-huh.
She's got impulse control issues, so those aren't okay. But all
Mhm.
feelings are from God. So all
Right.
feelings are valid, and all God wants us to experience all feelings. Because if we don't experience anger, then we're often going to just continue living with injustice or thing that isn't right with the world. So
Yeah.
anger, isn't a bad thing. Being sad isn't a bad thing. So we're
Right.
just very intentional about, we never tell her to stop crying. We
Right.
encourage her if she's crying to cry it out, baby. Really feel those tears, really, feel it coming out of you,
Yeah.
because we don't want her to experience what I did, which was just, I think a lot of my migraine started, I had to keep all of that in.
Yeah.
And scientists believe that 50 to 80% of physical pain is from emotional pain. And a lot of it is, it could be from trauma. It could be from just keeping our emotions in for too long. I mean, it
Yeah.
makes us sick. And so that's what I tell our daughter, that I don't want you to be was growing up. I don't want you to be sick like I was for so long. And I still am, but I, I work hard on, letting her know when I'm sad. I try not to hide that all the time from her.
Right.
If I'm embarrassed, I try to, let that out too. It's not how I was raised. It's not what's comfortable for me. And even like being on, my podcast or on other people's podcasts, and being completely vulnerable and open, that's not
Right.
how I was raised. It's very uncomfortable, but I
Yeah.
feel it's good for me, and it's good for other people.
Yeah. It totally is. And again, in the spirit of helping others, right? And that's what you're doing. And I have to commend you, Lauren. I mean, in your lineage, it sounds like you are breaking the mold. Okay. You're breaking the mold of the pattern of how children were taught to handle their feelings. You know, and children these days, if we break the mold and give them that intentional space, to allow them to be sad, to be angry, and to give them the tools and how to manage through those feelings. You know, it's not just allowing them to feel that way, but help them navigate through feeling that way, which sounds clearly like what you're doing with your daughter. You know, we weren't taught growing up that it's a process, right? Like grieving, you lose a
Mhm.
loved one, or even lose a pet. You know, grieving is very tough. So, can you unpack this for us? Because you made a point earlier, Lauren, about the strength of community. Okay, even more so, a Christian-based community. Um, just unpack for us the importance of community, okay, when it comes to um, expressing your gratitude, and just having self-awareness, you know, of where you are in life, where you want to be. And I hope that question makes sense, but just the importance of community. A lot of listeners don't may not have community, or feel like they're alone in the world, just as you mentioned before with chronic pain. How can they find that community, you know, of those who, if they don't know what they're going through, at least they empathize?
Absolutely. So for me, community has been hugely important. It helped me find my purpose. It helped me find joy in the world again.
Hmm.
And I started a group at my church for people with chronic pain, and we
Hmm.
meet every week. And it's been life changing. Not just the books that we're going through,
Yeah.
and learning more about how God is walking with us through this pain and our
Yes.
health journeys, but also being able to come together and for 20, 30 minutes of the hour just really express how we're really doing, the part of us that we don't want to burden our family and our friends with.
Right.
And being with a group of people who understands that we keep these things in and that we need to express them, and understands a lot of what we're each going through.
Yeah.
It's invaluable. And we can always lift each other up and encourage each other and pray for each other. And my group, just because of the nature of chronic pain, is completely virtual. So I love the idea of in-person groups, but
Right.
because chronic pain is so unpredictable, I
Right.
chose to have my group virtual. So I've got people from states that are part of my group too.
Wow.
And it's really been a fantastic addition to all of our lives.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's fabulous. No, that's fantastic. And thank goodness technology, allows that that added benefit, allows that additional option of people connecting and really connecting over things that are genuine, right? Just relating to each other and the chronic pain that you're going through. Um, how can someone, let's say either a significant other or a close family member or even a roommate, someone you're not related to or romantically involved in, but they're your roommate, okay? How can how can you help them who may not be going through chronic pain or have chronic pain or fibromyalgia? Um, what is it they can do to say, "Hey, I'm with you. I understand. I'm an ally. I don't feel that pain. I don't know what it's like. I have no idea what it feels like, but I support you." You know what I mean?
Mhm.
How can they do that for you, and you feel that you're being supported, even though they don't know exactly how you're feeling with the pain?
I think the best way is to just remove any element of judgment. So if we can't make that social engagement
Yeah,
because we're, laying in bed and we can't get up,
yeah,
don't judge us for being undependable.
okay,
And if we can't clean the kitchen that day, don't judge us for being lazy,
right,
because the pain and the illness are very frequently in control of us, and these are
yeah,
not qualities that we want to have. We don't want to be
right,
undependable. We don't want to have a messy house, but
right.
sometimes the pain is just in control.
Okay. Well, that's encouraging. It's very encouraging. Um, Selfishly for me, I think I'm on the
Mhm.
right track in how I'm responding to supporting my wife, because there are events when we are well intentioned. We have plans to go, say, to an outdoor summer concert, right?
Mhm.
And it may be a rough day for her, and she's had neck and back surgery, and so um, there's good and bad days. Like you said, chronic pain is unpredictable. And so yeah, I'm to the point now where I don't even need to try to not have judgment. I just don't. I realize it can happen here, it can happen there. We've been married for 18 years, so I and it's just a way of life. If we can enjoy it, fine. If not, then we stay home and do something else. So that is an incredible piece of insight that you just shared that I want my listeners to grasp. So, for the listeners, you've heard it right here. Okay. Lauren Rose mentioned the best way that you can support your significant other, your best friend, your roommate, whoever it may be, your coworker, when it comes to just being empathetic about how they feel, what pain they're going through, is to put the judgment aside, okay, and not think of them as messy because they don't clean the house. It's not a characteristic of theirs that they want to have, having this pain, right? Just put aside the the put aside the judgment, okay, and just understand how they're feeling, even though you don't know or experience what they're feeling. So, once again, thank you for that insight, for sure, Lauren. I really appreciate it. All right. So I wanted to cover something here or ask you something. This is in reference to your blog. I've read a couple entries in your blog, and one that kind of stood out to me was an entry you had called "It Hurts to Be a Silent Sufferer,"
Mhm.
and so I saw several of these entries were along thematic. It hurts to mom. That's the community. That's the brand, the platform, the podcast. Okay, and the blog. But it hurts to do different things, right? It hurts to be a
Mhm.
silent sufferer, and so um, in that blog, I realized you made several references to vulnerability and not wanting to outwardly express feeling this way, right? For fear of being perceived as weak. And again, a lot of this is based on how we were raised growing up. You know, me, like grown men, not supposed to cry, so that sort of thing. One thing you mentioned that resonated with me, and I'm trying not to paraphrase, so I'm going to quote, and this is what you said. You said, between my practice of burying my emotions and my habit of putting other people first, it was still hard to speak up. So with that phrase you mentioned there in that entry, Lauren, in this world of cause and effect, I'm guessing you buried your emotions to not be seen as vulnerable. But after so many years of suppressing feelings of sadness and anger, even since childhood, what was the turning point that helped you realize that you must acknowledge these feelings and create the environment so that those around you can express them as well? I know you mentioned earlier about having that intentional environment for your children, but I would think it wouldn't just be restricted to your children for that type of environment around those in your circle.
Sure. And it was when I was 35 and I was in a 4-week inpatient in hospital pain recovery program.
Okay.
And it's when I learned what I said earlier, that 50 to 80% of physical pain is from emotional pain.
Hmm.
And I just really realized I had so much that I've been carrying. I mean, even like what restaurant I preferred to go to, I
Yeah.
wouldn't even have an opinion on that when it came to my relationships, because I just didn't. I always wanted the other person to put the other person first, and I didn't ever want to make them upset.
Hmm. Hmm.
So all of my all of my feelings and all of my traumas I had just buried, and I didn't realize that it had been affecting me for decades.
Hmm.
I learned just how much
Hmm.
emotional baggage and emotional trauma was related to physical pain.
Mm, I gotcha. I gotcha. And it sounds like you have the vibe that I'm getting from you, Lauren, is you have a heart for service. You have a nurturing heart. You care for others, and it's quite easy to put someone's needs ahead of yours when you have a genuine heart for service. Am I accurate, or am I off base, or?
No, I don't think you're off base at all. And I mean, I think my pastor says the opposite of love isn't hate, selfishness.
Mhm,
And so in the way that I love people, I try to put them first. That's just
mhm.
a natural way for me to be in a relationship.
Yeah, it makes all kinds of sense. I think it's a natural way for everyone to be in a relationship, right? One thing that God has put on my heart, if I can just quickly share, is in my view, um, He has made two things inherent within us, and that those two things are, number one, we don't live on an island. It's inherent in us to interact and connect with people. Even if we grow up never married, never in a relationship, never having children, we it's inherent for us to connect with people and to be a part of something, right? And the second thing I believe he put in us that's inherent is the will and the desire give, to give. Um, it's we're in his image, as it says, right? And so, um, we connect with people, spreading the word, the gospel, right? You have to connect with people to do that. And then, of course, giving of yourself and helping others and being of service. All those things are true. And so, that leads to relationships, whether it's a romantic relationship or relationships with making friends, and you described it way more beautifully than I did, but I just wanted to share with you that I think I'm in lockstep with you in what you feel and believe, as far as what God puts on us to connect with people and to serve.
Absolutely. I completely agree. I mean, it's about it in the Bible how we were not made to be alone. We were made for community, and that's why they created the church, was to
Yeah.
have a group of like-minded people, a bunch of people who are completely different in all sorts of ways, but
Hmm.
had this one belief, so they could, iron sharpens iron,
Yeah.
and so they can just rebuke each other and encourage each other and love on each other. So
Yes.
I completely agree. We were made for community.
Man, that's great. That is awesome. Yeah, we're definitely in agreement. Um, okay, so you have this community. It hurts to mom. You have, correspondence and communications with your community. You have this blog. You have the podcast. I mean, what are some of the things you talk about on the podcast? Um, you know, Different episodes.
Sure. So I have episodes on chronic pain and chronic illness, like health in general, on
Hmm.
parenting, and on just different life topics I think are interesting and that could apply to anybody. So I've got a
Hmm.
lot of parenting topics. I've got a lot of topics on things like um, I've got one episode from a medical doctor on how spirituality is a missing part of the medical system, and how
Mm,
that's really important to a lot of people's healing.
yeah.
And I've had a lady on who healed her chronic pain that was due to trauma after 12 years on her own. And I have episodes on yoga, and I have an episode on decluttering. Just
Yeah.
anything that I think will be interesting. My audience is generally parents, specific,
Yeah.
probably more specifically moms with chronic pain and illness.
Right, right. Okay. No, I got you. I got you. Great. And those are key things, to discuss. And I love what you mentioned earlier about having an episode where um there was someone you mentioned who claims that there's the spiritual element is missing from
Hmm.
from managing pain and healing and so forth. And as soon as you said that, I thought to myself, wow, you know what, that is true. I've had conversations with a lot of people where there's been this big toss up between Eastern medicine and Western medicine, or Eastern treatments and Western treatments. Well, there's spiritual treatment as well, right? And that, the irony behind it is it's the most powerful
Yeah.
treatment in my view. Your thoughts?
Absolutely, because doctors, whether they're from Western medicine or Eastern medicine, they don't know everything.
No.
And they certainly don't know enough about chronic pain to be able to help a lot of us manage our pain.
Right.
So, I mean, God's the ultimate healer. He can either heal us, or he can help us manage, or he can just help us walk through it, in him.
Yes. Yes. So again, like I mentioned, Lauren, you have this awesome community, with the blog, with the podcast, with the social mediums. I'm sure, in connecting with people there, the groups, um, and like I said, the podcast. And if if out of all these different outlets, right? and you're spreading this message. If you could take one primary message or lesson and put it into a sentence, one sentence for your audience and listeners, for the world, for that matter, for the world, okay, um, that you would want them to take away from what you have to share with It Hurts to Mom, what would that sentence be?
Our circumstances do not control our attitudes or our destiny. We do.
Love it. Our circumstances do not control our attitude or our destiny. We do.
Yep.
You know what? A very, very straight to the point sentence that says and means a lot. It really is. And thank you. I want that to resonate with the listeners here, to drink that in, okay, and don't let circumstances define who you are when you have the ability, the God-given ability, to turn things around and change things. So um, that's an awesome message, Lauren. Lauren, how can the listeners learn more about your, the great work that you're doing in building community, connect with you, read your blog, and subscribe to your podcast?
Yeah, so my podcast is on all of the major platforms:
Okay.
Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, all of them.
Hmm.
My blog is, and it's called It Hurts to Mom, like you've mentioned.
Hmm.
My blog is ithurtstomom.com, and I'm at It Hurts on Instagram and Facebook. And if you want to communicate with me and be part of my group or be on my podcast or just reach out, you can reach me at ithurtstomom@gmail.com.
Fantastic. We're going to put those social media links as well as the website link, ithurtstomom.com, and the link to the podcast in the episode show notes so the listeners can click, get to your website, subscribe to your podcast while listening to this great conversation. And you know what? I'm going to follow you because I know without a doubt, even though I feel like I support my wife in her pain and non-judgmental at all, I'm sure I can always do better. And I always strive to do better. Right. And I have no doubt that your episodes and your blogs will have anecdotes that can help me. And I want the listeners to follow suit in following Lauren Rose, to pick up those anecdotes to either help you through your chronic pain or to help you in support of a close one in your life with chronic pain. Lauren Rose, thank you so much for coming on the show. I truly, truly appreciate having you on.
Thank you so much. It's been delightful.
Oh, likewise, likewise. And I want to thank all of you for tuning in and listening. And hey, look, if you have a loved one who seems to be down, uh, going through deep, dark days of despair, just don't seem to be themselves, not quite sure where to turn or who to turn to, I humbly ask that you please share this show with them, because on the road to rediscovery, we want our listeners to know two things. Number one, you're not alone. And number two, there's always hope. The road to rediscovery, it's a movement, a revolution. And guess what? You are now part of it. We're all roadies on this journey of life. And it sure feels good having you on the road with me. Thanks again for listening. We'll chat again soon. We really hope you enjoyed this episode of The Road to Rediscovery. We'd love to hear from you. Shoot us an email at roadtorediscoverypodcast@gmail.com and leave us any questions or comments you may have.